Meeting called to order, Gary.
Oh, okay.
All right, good morning again. Good to see everybody here. Let's start as we normally do with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm the same way. Good to see everybody here, all the board members except for Sharon Vaught. There she is, okay. And Patrick will not be available even on Zoom this morning. And I welcome our guests as well. We'll start with roll call. Kim Jones, I'm present. Gary Farmer, present. Bob Boyette, present. Patrick Miller, absent. Dr. Dave Doble, here. You're here. And Sharon Lott. Sharon, we got you on.
I'm here.
And Kevin Irving.
Here.
And Brian Shaw is here as well, along with Cheryl Iannucci and Manny. Good to see you guys, and thank you for being here today on this nice, cool day, pre-summer day, I call it. Okay. We'll start with approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, Dave, second. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to add, just FYI, point of information under the closed session regarding security.
Okay. Any other modifications, changes, additions? So the agenda stands with the addition of the security in the closed session. So all in favor? Moving second, all in favor? Aye, same sign. Sharon? Okay. And we move on to approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which is in our packet. I'm not sure it was sent out earlier or not, but. Give you another 30 seconds. Speed read.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
after perusal, if there are no other changes or corrections, I move that we accept the minutes as written.
We move that we accept the minutes as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Boyette. Any further comments? If not, all in favor of accepting the minutes as noted? Thank you. Motion carried. We're going to move right along. into celebrations.
Biggest celebrations, we have two, and that was graduation. We had 4 graduates. The graduation ceremony was well attended. Everything went really well. The Beddingfield High School JROTC program did our colors for us at the very beginning and started the ceremony off, so we were very appreciative of their participation. We had our guest speaker, who was Miss Melissa Chapman, who actually was a student here as well as a staff member, and she really did a great job delivering a speech where she personalized each presentation for each student, and it just made a very special presentation for the students and the parents. But everything went really well, and we were excited for our graduates. We also had our 60th celebration. The day could not have gone better. We had approximately 300 attendees. I know the newspaper indicated about 250, but that was earlier in the day. We had some additional folks come in the afternoon. It was very well received. A lot of the alumni were actually asking when the next one was scheduled. So all the special events that we had, the Globetrotter, the Fun Run, the Gary's introduction of everything, everything was very well attended. So we were just really excited. It was a collaborative effort by all of our staff, and they did a great job putting it together. It went so well that some of our food trucks that came and supported us actually started running out of food. So it was a successful day all around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to follow up. I came. It was absolutely beautiful, and I've been coming for all of them. And the only problem I saw is the guy that spoke first spoke way too long. So you need maybe to correct that, but it's hard to put 60-year history in 10 minutes. It's impossible.
Well, your intro comment was 10 minutes. No, I can't do that. So he already started out by saying this is impossible to do in 10
I did hold it to 30 before I got gone.
It's well done, by the way. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else from you?
Not for the,
We'll move on to the director's report.
since we met 2 weeks ago, there's not a lot of updates, but I do have a few. We are continuing our transition from DPI to DOA, and that continues to be on track. We have ran into a few little glitches here and there, just with DPI wanting to close out things a little earlier than we can allow that to happen, and DOA not wanting to do it as early as we need them to. So a perfect example is our procurement cards, where we use to go and get like emergency items for maintenance or dorm situation for summer camp, things of those natures, with those quick purchases that you need to do. DPI wanted us to close them out at the end of May, and DOA didn't want us to start until August. So we were able to kind of bridge that gap and figure out a way to do that, to still be able to get them to continue allowing us to make those purchases. So it's just little things like that that we're running into, some glitches. But our ASL classes are going well for the month of June. They're not as well attended as our first few rounds, but it is summertime, so we realized that going in when we scheduled it. But we do have a pretty good group that is coming on a regular basis, so we're excited about that. And Susan wasn't able to be here today for a financial report, but the business office, we didn't actually run the report for this meeting because they have been swamped with trying to close out the end of the fiscal year, as well as get ready for the transition on July 1. So we had a meeting yesterday with OSBM. We had a meeting earlier in the week with all the state agencies. So that is, we're just finalizing all the different little tasks that we still need to do. She did give me an update. So the board per diem update is we have run into a little bit of a snag, and DPI has directed us to use temporary employment positions for all of you. to be able to reimburse you or to pay you your per diem. But we don't have a way to do that because we don't have temporary positions. So we were trying to work with them, but when talking with DOA, they said we do not have to do that, that all we have to do is submit the travel reimbursement form and for you, and we'll be able to reimburse you. So once we make the transition, we're going to do that and then be able to go back to July 1 of last year. Any questions about that?
So you're saying it's retro back 1 year?
Yes. And we can justify that because of the closeout and not being able to do it right now.
Well, we do have to fill out tax forms now and everything, right, or not?
I don't believe so. I think with just the travel reimbursement form, I don't believe you'll have to.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe it's fiscal, not calendar.
Yes. So July 1 to June 30th. And then our HR update, our recruitment, we have, as you know, we have a vacancy for our high school math teacher position, and we need another elementary teacher based on the numbers that we have coming in for this fall. I'll share that information in a little while. We interviewed a couple of candidates last week, and we actually made two recommendations. So we're working through that process and getting the background checks and all that. So we're very optimistic about filling those two positions. We'll also be conducting interviews for our maintenance tech 3 on Thursday, June 19th. And we had offered that position out to someone, but they did not get back with us. So unfortunately, we had to move forward with additional candidates. We have interviewed several EDAs throughout this course of this year, and we have not been successful in finding people of the right caliber to fill those positions. So we're going to continue working and looking at strategies to entice people to apply for those positions, as well as the residential life trainer. Those are the two positions that unfortunately with the state salary, they're a little bit lower salary scales, and so they are more difficult to fill pretty much in every school that I've ever worked at. So it's always a challenge for EDAs and TAs.
What is a ED?
EDA is like your teacher's assistants in your traditional settings. So our transportation supervisor, Deborah Pierce, has put in her retirement papers. So as of October of this year, she will be retiring, and we're excited for her, but definitely will be a loss for us. And we will be posting that position when the time comes as well.
Yes, sir. Kevin.
I'm curious. So is employees, are the ones that you're interviewing, do they sign or not?
Some do and some don't. Generally speaking, we have not had a lot of people that sign or deafness apply for our positions, unfortunately. But we definitely, prioritize if they do sign as one of those requirements. That's a priority. And then if they don't sign, do they meet all the other requirements for that position, and are they capable of learning to sign pretty quickly? So, and are they willing to go to the classes and do what they need to do? So we have 30 vacancies currently, and that includes the 2 teachers that I mentioned earlier. So hopefully that will be 28 after this week. And then reallocations are still underway. We had a certain date that we had to shut everything down, and that date has passed. And so once everything gets started back up after July 1, we will start realigning some additional positions, but our organizational structure has been completed. And that's basically our table of organization. I shared that with you earlier in this spring as well. So we have actually been ahead of the ball, the 8 ball, so to speak, on that process. And so we were very pleased with how quickly our HR department and our business office has worked to get everything that they need done. So we were very pleased with that. So again, just the transition, Simone left a note that, those conversations are continuing to be underway. And the other 2 schools are involved in that, as well as OSBM, the controller's office, DPI, DOA. And then, so we're working hard at it. We have one more meeting scheduled on the 23rd, and that may be our last meeting for the transition process. So we're hoping July 1 comes and everything rolls over smoothly, but we'll probably run into some glitches along the way, and we'll just have to deal with those. For our vacant positions, the positions that we're really prioritizing right now are our MEC 3, our elementary school teacher, our high school math teacher, our guidance counselor. We'd like to hire 2 to 3 EDAs and 1 to 2 RLTs, which are your residential life trainers. And we also need a bus driver. So those are the priorities that we're going to be working on over the course of the next month. However, we can interview for the next couple of weeks, but we won't be able to do anything in the system to finalize that employment process until after July 1. Any questions about any of that?
Yeah, one thing, let me back up just a little bit. I don't know if it's printed or online on Facebook, but where, for your staff, where do they get recognition? For example, if they win an award, or maybe their abilities to do their tasks for their job, where do they get recognition?
So we have a teacher and EDA of the month that we recognize each month, and that is actually given and recognized from a peer. I gave the very first one of the school year, and then they recognized each other. And so we definitely celebrate any, awards or anything that's going on in our staff's lives. We do that during our staff meetings at the beginning. We do celebrations like we do here. And we open it up to the staff so that they can actually share and celebrate, whether it's professional or personal. And then we also do postings on Facebook. I believe there's a posting right now. Michaela Brown is at a training for NASA. There's 15 people in North Carolina that were chosen for that. And so one of our high school science teachers was chosen. And so we posted that on Facebook just this week.
Is that for NASA, do you say?
Mhm.
NASA?
Yes.
No, that's pretty significant.
Yes, it is.
Good.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, it's June. What happens if you cannot get a math teacher? I mean, like, what are the contingencies you have for really critical positions that there's nobody out there?
So right now, we are actually very blessed to have a retired teacher from Nash County who worked for me whenever I was at Nash Central. And he had retired, and when I came down in January, we actually needed a math teacher. So he's been on and helping us out part-time. So we've been able to cover like our crucial positions, and he's working with our EDAs to develop their skills in the math so that they're more able to help our students as well. And so it's just 1 or 2 math classes that we are short. And so with his guidance, we had the math teacher this school year. But we're very positive and optimistic that the math teacher, she's actually a special ed teacher that's worked for me in the past, and she's wonderful. But we're optimistic that she will accept the position and we'll be able to fill that position.
Have you tried, say, recruiting recent graduates of Gallaudet University or NTID or places that have, deaf people who are graduating.
Right. Unfortunately, what we're finding is that a lot of the deaf community does not go into education. And so we get a lot where we have about 5 or 6 students from UNCG, for instance. And we interviewed one candidate last year, but they just weren't appropriate. The interview did not go real well. So we've had their graduates pretty much up until that one. But it's very hard to find people that are going into education. As you know, there's a shortage anyway, and then, yes.
This is just a suggestion. I know Morganton uses it, and we did back when, but now maybe not available to you. But there's a litany of people that have retired from here that would love to come back and do what they do best in the area they do best, and they're deaf. So you may want to check into that and have you, and maybe a standing group of people in case of sickness or short-term. I couldn't begin to tell you short-term and long-term, but if you're going to have an absence of a teacher or somebody like that for a short-term, they would be, I'm almost positive, just willing to come back. If nothing else, just read in the dorm or to have programs like so they could, and it's so important for these young kids to see people that are deaf, that are very, very successful, that taught here, that still live here, that's part of the community, to interact with our kids of all ages.
Definitely, yes. And we're also working, right now, like for instance, our math teacher that we have, even though he's certified, right now he's having to work as a substitute through Action Group and get paid through Action Group. But we're trying to figure out if there's a way that we can actually pay him for salary so that he can be a teacher of record, so that he can administer state tests. So when you have substitute teachers, they can't do that. And so we're working to see if there's a way of making that happen. While respecting the fact that he is retired and getting his retirement. So when you retire, you can only work 29 hours a week. So we're working with him, and we would be willing to work with others to do something like that. But we'd like to have someone that's on staff so that we can, work with them a little bit better. All right. Operation Accelerate, our numbers changed pretty significantly towards the very end, right before it opened up. So we opened up with 28 students for the first week. We had 12 students that attended from ENCSD. 22 students started at the beginning of this week for the second week. Students were housed in ILC, and that seems to be a much better environment. The students that returned from ENCSD, they were pretty excited about the dorm situation. So the roof was able to, it's not completely finished, but they were able to get the roof itself done so that we could have the students in the dorm. And we didn't want them working on the edges and the framing and stuff until after OA was over this week. So they will come back next week and just finish the molding and things of that nature next week. And Alan is here, and he's just going to give an update on maintenance. Alan, if you want to come up.
Good morning. All right, so for maintenance, things that we're working on and got in progress right now and things that we completed. As you came in, you saw the brown paper on the floor. We started progress on that again in the auditorium. They got all the old seats removed, all the old carpet. We've cut out the concrete to lay the conduit. So right now they're tying in the wiring for the lights that will be in the floor, tying it into our mechanical room. So we're moving forward with that, and the process is going pretty good now. The McAdam walk-in cooler, it's been inoperative for almost 2 years now, from my understanding. But that's something that we got in process, and that should be finished up today. And so we'll have that walk-in cooler where we can reuse that kitchen in McAdams for classroom purposes, or as also as a backup in the event that we should have a failure in our Vestal kitchen if one of the cooler freezers goes down. Alfred flooring is in the process right now of being replaced. That flooring was old, it's had water damage, we've tried to clean it in the past, and we're finally getting it replaced, and it's in process as we speak. ILC repairs and painting to host our students and our guests for Operation Accelerate. This included painting, some minor repairs, adding ceiling fans to the back porch for the students when they're on the back porch doing activities. Superintendent's office has been prepped and painted over in the Woodard building. Hugh and I have been working with HVAC improvements. Our HVAC systems around the campus have not been updated. Some of the programs are 15, 20 years old. They're not communicating properly. And so we're looking at trying to see how we can update the software, hardware in some of the cases, because things like the little controller valves are outdated in, say, the McAdams building. And so we're looking for replacements for that and how we can get everything upgraded, integrated, and we can monitor it. Because some of the buildings right now, like ILC, where the students are, we don't have any eyes on it to monitor it, to see what's going on. And so these are some of the things that we're trying to tackle and get in place. Vestal hallways will get new flooring this week. Upstairs in the classroom, it will be the same flooring as what we're putting in the Alfred building. And we have a new carpet for the upstairs library. The crew should get started next week on that. And it's going to be a 2 to 3 week job because of trying to move all the library books, all the shelving, all the furniture. It's a pretty big job because that library is a very good sized library. But that we were hoping to have it done really by the end of this week, but the carpet, trying to get ordered and get the supplier to make it, is just taking longer than what we had hoped. We should start within the next 2 weeks also of upgrading the other coolers in the Vestal kitchen. The Vestal kitchen, when I started here in January, we had multiple outages within the first couple of months. Leaks, old lines that are worn thin. We're still using the old style refrigerant, which is getting very expensive to replace. And so we've got a contractor already lined up to update it, upgrade it, and so that we won't have to keep having so many failures in that kitchen cooler refrigerator. And then also the grounds crew. The grounds crew have been working hard to upgrade a lot of our bedding areas. We've had mulch brought up and put out, trying to have it ready for the graduation, for the 60th birthday, as well as improvements on trying to cut back these trees. A lot of these trees were planted up next to the buildings. And so you got limbs leaning up against the building on the roof. And so we're started pruning all of those back. Once we get through all the trees that are near the buildings and near the roofs, then we're going to go around the campus and then trim up the trees down the roadways, pathways, walkways. And so, but that's pretty much what we've done and what we're working on right now. Yes, sir.
Alan, this is so small in the grand scheme of things, but there's an area right over here that you've got a very long dumpster, for lack of a better word, green thing. And I'm sure with everything you're doing, you probably made it as close as you could. But you know, or if you don't know, the people that have been here, we've never been able to grow grass there at all. And y'all got this place immaculate, and there's grass everywhere, and it's beautiful. And I just don't understand why they didn't pull it right there and drop it off only a couple feet more in the parking lot where it's not used as a parking lot. And then it won't, because if it stays there a week, 2 weeks, that grass underneath it's dead.
Yeah,
And I was wondering, if there was a reason for that, or just maybe people didn't realize how hard it is, because it's solid clay over there, and then you've got this steam unit that's coming out, and there's always it's really tough to grow grass there.
well, and we did that because the contractor who's doing the work in the auditorium said that any grass that got damaged, that they would replant it and replace it. And so that's,
By what year? I mean, it's gonna be tough. It's just a little simple thing, I just want to tell you, place looks fabulous.
I thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you for the
Thank
update, yeah.
Now, I've been sitting here and I've been watching the interpreter and also seeing the steam in behind through the window there. And do we have any idea when that will be finished?
Right now, the steam is coming out because we were unable to cut our steam off from the Long Lake side. We were going to make the repairs on the long Memorial Day weekend because we had a long weekend to work on it. But when they tried to cut the steam off at Longley, the valve where they cut it off, it had a major leak. And so they felt there was a safety issue to leave it valved off. And so they opened it back up, and they're not scheduled to work on it until this Friday. It's the next date that they gave us that they could cut off the steam, because we have to have the steam cut off first before we can pump out the hot water that's down there and then look at what we have going on our side. So as of right now, we're kind of got our hands tied waiting on Longley.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, for next update is on enrollment. So we had 5 admissions meetings to determine eligibility. We reviewed all their data, their IEPs. So we do a pretty thorough review of behavior reports, attendance, IEPs, any medical information, psychological evaluations, any data that we can review to determine if a student meets the criteria that's set forth in HB 11. And so we determined that 2 out of the 5 were definitely eligible to attend school. We had 2 that we decided that we needed to collect additional data. And when that happens, the student is actually allowed to come to school for a 90-day period while we continue collecting that data to determine whether or not they're eligible. And so we had 2 of those as well. And then we had 1 that unfortunately did not meet the eligibility criteria. We have 2 additional applications that we are currently in the process of pulling records. Sometimes the LEAs are a little bit quicker in getting that information to us than others. Summertime is more of a struggle to get that information just because of a lot of people not being in the school buildings, and your data managers don't always have access to the EC records. So we work with the LEAs pretty closely trying to get that information as quickly. So we do encourage any parents that are interested in having their child come to school to make sure they start that process early so we have time to get those records, review it, and then schedule that admissions meeting to determine that eligibility. So we're pretty excited. We graduated 4. This is the first time we will be +1 in the last 7 years. So we're really excited about that. So we're in our summer. It was kind of comical because this week we were in a meeting and someone made the comment in the state that summertime we're not real busy, nothing really happens here, so couldn't we wait until August to do something? But summertime is very busy in a school system. This is when we really look at the planning and preparation for the school year. We're interviewing and hiring for vacant positions, our buildings and grounds prep for the school year, and just regular everyday maintenance on top of just trying to do improvements. We're looking at policy reviews and updates, and then staff handbook gets updated and revised. Student handbooks are updated and revised as we change policies and procedures, as well as preparing for the back to work week and getting the trainings ready for the teachers. So there's a lot. We actually have our open house scheduled on August 18th in the evening, late afternoon, early evening, for all of our students and families to be invited to come and take tours of the campus and see where their child's going to be staying and living from Sunday through Thursday if they're boarding with us. And we start our first day of school on August 19th. So that'll be here before we know it. Okay, our new business items in your folders, you have 3 policies. And the first policy is evaluation.
Before we do that,
Okay, I'm sorry.
public input is next.
Public input, yeah.
Give a follow.
Sorry about that.
Well, thank you for the update, by the way.
You're welcome.
So we have one family, Elizabeth, for public input. Just want to remind you to limit that to about 3 minutes, okay? And some other conditions is Lori will read off in a minute.
Sure. The board appreciates and welcomes public comment. There are some guidelines. Just want to review those. I'm sure it won't be a problem, but just for the record, review them, and also for any person who might want to speak in the future. Each speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak, and the total public comment period will not exceed 30 minutes, just to keep meetings under control unless the board decides to extend it. Individuals who wish to speak should sign in 30 minutes before the meeting, and only those people who sign in will be recognized. The comments should pertain to matters related to the school's mission, policies, programs, etc. This goes without saying, but I always say it. Speakers should address the board with respect and refrain from any personal attacks, profanity, or disruptive behavior. That certainly does not preclude the expression of viewpoints and opinions, just done with decorum. If there are multiple individuals wishing to speak on the same topic, they are encouraged to designate one representative so we do not have repetition. And the standard approach for the board is not to respond to speakers after they speak. It's an opportunity for the board to hear from the public, not really interaction. If there's a need for a response, the board will discuss that and get back to it. But anyway, we appreciate you willing to speak. First is Elizabeth Dryden.
Dryden. Yes.
Come on up.
Can I stand here?
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Dryden, and this is my husband, Matt. We're here today to discuss the suggested policy changes as it relates to the summer camp that ENCSD puts on due to a situation involving our son on June 9th, 2025. This is in order to prevent my son or any other deaf child of Eastern NC in the future from missing out on a childhood experience such as a summer camp that otherwise cannot participate in due to their disability in the normal rural world and the significant opportunity of socializing with like individuals that they otherwise do not have the ability to do in their home setting as well. Operation Accelerate is the name of the summer camp that is put on by ENCSD for 2 weeks in the summer. It is advertised to all deaf and hard of hearing students who live in the eastern 54 counties of NC, regardless of where they go to school during the school year. There is not an age suggestion or limit. On the application, there's nowhere to attach an IEP for students that do not go to the ENCSD, so staff know where a student falls on communication levels or supports needed. My son, Weston Dryden, is 6 years old. We put in our application in the spring, and he was accepted for the summer camp. He attends Newport Elementary School in Carteret County, North Carolina, and has just graduated from kindergarten, whereas he is the only deaf child in a special education class and in the school. So when the opportunity arose for Weston to be able to attend a summer camp with other deaf children, we were elated. Unfortunately, due to behavioral issues within the first 2.5 hours of camp, he was promptly dismissed from the camp for the rest of the 2 weeks. our offers prior to the camp to attend to help transition our child with an expressive verbal communication level of an 18 to 20-month-old and expressive signing capabilities of a 3 to 4-year-old were deferred. When my husband dropped him off at 8:30 in the morning that morning, he again offered to stay for an hour to help because we know our child and we know he can have behavioral challenges when frustrated or pushed. My husband was told for the safety of the students at the camp they could not let him attend or transition. So Matt returned to our camper at Camper's Lodge next door, where he received the call on the first day at 10:57 a.m. to come and get Weston for hitting and kicking a staff member. Matt was there in a few minutes. He notified me that he had to pick up Weston and he was barred from returning for the rest of the 2-week camp. I made a phone call to Heather Goins to attempt to receive some clarity of the situation and investigate what criteria had to be met to be discharged from a summer camp meant for deaf children or behaviors that are quite common to children with communication delays. What I have ascertained thus far is that we have not yet had the opportunity to meet with Ms. Iannici due to scheduling issues between the both, is that there is no clear-cut criteria for which a student can be expelled. So I've come today to ask the Board of Trustees to consider adding a few policy changes as it relates to their summer camp for the future. Number one, if a student is not an ENCSD student and/or it is their first time attending, please request an IEP that staff members can review prior to camp starting. Each student is different and has different supports in place with known behaviors. They come with different levels of communication delays. These should be reviewed and understood by camp staff. Number two, have specific criteria that must be met prior to expulsion of a student and ideally a warning system. A one and done approach at 2 hours and 27 minutes is not acceptable. Allow parents the option if they want or feel the need to help transition a new student. In public school, we undergo background checks in order to volunteer in the classrooms. This can easily be done prior to the summer camp. This ensures the safety of other campers, staff, and the student from numerous angles, as the incident last Monday could have been completely avoided. We understand that you can't have a ton of parents in the way at summer camp, but for case-by-case basis should be considered based on age, communication levels, and history of previous attendance. We believe that these changes will set each student camper up for success and allow for an entertaining and educational summer camp experience. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. That is extremely important to our family. We look forward to hearing from your designated liaison regarding these concerns. We also plan to discuss our concerns with Ms. Iannici. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the input.
And Mr. Dryden signed up, but I'm assuming that you've spoken for both of you.
She speaks on our behalf. A lot. And well.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. We're going to move on to new business. Yes.
New business. The first one, you have 3 policies in your folders. And the first one is evaluation of student progress. And when reviewing our policies, we have looked at Nash County as well as Wilson County, as well as the policy that was in place. And although it does follow the same guidelines and processes as the other 2 counties, we've made it a little simpler language just to make it more user-friendly for those who may struggle with reading. And so this first policy, basically, we want the policy originally stated that teachers could never give a student below a 50, whether they did an assignment or they didn't do an assignment. If they didn't do an assignment, instead of getting a 0, they got a 50. And if you are a parent and you're looking in Infinite Campus and you're looking at your student's progress, you can't see whether or not that child hasn't been doing his work, because it looks like he just did really bad on that assignment. And so what we were proposing is that instead of doing that, to go ahead and for the first semester, go ahead and NIC, put all the grades that the student receives. And then at the end of your first quarter and your third quarter, change that grade by doing a manual override to a 50. So if a student were getting like a 46, for instance, during the first quarter, at the end of that, the parent can kind of track, the student can track what assignments they're doing, what are they doing poorly on, so that they can provide support at home, so that the teacher can provide additional support, so we can look at where the students, failing or having trouble. And then the 50 at the end of the first and third quarter, the purpose for that is if they've just bombed the first quarter and all of a sudden it starts clicking, that second quarter, they can still bring that up to a 70 or above and still pass for the semester. What we find is that if you don't give them that 50 for the first quarter or the third quarter, a lot of students will throw in the towel, and then they become behavioral concerns for that second quarter of that semester. And so it gives the students an opportunity to kind of see where they are, the parents an opportunity to see where their child really is. When the teacher overrides it, they actually put a comment in indicating what the actual grade was or would have been had the 50 not been given. So it just gives a better impression of where the child is academically, so that we can figure out what that particular child may need to be successful. And so that's the proposal for this policy. Any questions based on, yes?
So the rationale for not giving them a 0, which is what they earned if they don't do any work at all, is that it's going to be so demotivating if they're so far in the hole. Is that it? In other words, like I'm trying to understand why you would not give them a 0 if they earn nothing.
To be honest with you, I wasn't here whenever they drafted that policy, so I'm not sure why they did that, but it does make it very challenging. If you have a student that you want to retain, which, the teachers were advocating that I retain a student this past year, and I look at their grades and they have, the lowest grade is like a 68 and everything else is 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I'm like, with these grades, I can't justify, retaining a student. But then they brought up, well, that's not really their grade because we have to give 50s instead of 0s. So it makes it real difficult to evaluate where a child is when you have to give them that 50. And I'm not sure why that was implemented. I know why the 50 is implemented in some of the schools for that first semester or first quarter and third quarter, because it just gives them a second chance for that second quarter to bring that grade up. But giving them a 50, if they're not doing the work.
So you're sort of agreeing with me.
Yes.
So maybe that ought to be relooked at or not. I mean, I don't know the inner workings and whether, no, these students are not doing well, but we're here to support the students and we want them to pass, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, so that's what this policy would change.
Yeah,
So
right.
currently they're given a 50 no matter what.
Right.
But I'd like to change that.
Right. Well,
to
I personally would support making it more reflecting the reality of what the students are doing in whatever way you feel is sort of appropriate given the situation, given motivation by students that's necessary. So, as instructional leader, I would like to support your idea.
You said you consulted with Nash County and Wilson County. What are their policies? Does it run parallel to what we're trying to do here, or does it run?
It runs
Again,
parallel, yes.
It runs parallel. I remember, I've been on the school board for a while, but it was a problem because they get so low down to start with, so far down, there was no recovery whatsoever. So they dropped out. And then we had all sorts of problems. And with a deaf kid dropping out, it's going to be really tough. So I can understand both sides, but,
Well, that's why that 50, that first quarter and third quarter is important, because it does give them that second chance and a little bit longer to kind of, get comfortable with the teacher and the transition to a new class and just kind of settle in that second semester or second quarter to really try to bring that grade up, and they can still get a 70 or above and pass for the semester then.
and remedial work can be done.
Yes.
Kevin, you.
So I'm trying to understand that as well, because at the same time, I feel as though for example, if a student is doing well in other subjects, other subject areas, they're doing well, no problems there, and they're not doing well in another subject area. So if they have a 0 or a 50, or is, maybe they have 70s and 80s in another subject area. So I don't know, maybe the person has a learning disability, or maybe the teacher is not teaching very well. Maybe there's something else that's going on, especially if they're doing well in other subjects. So if they're not doing well in one, are they doing the same in the other areas? So that's where, it's important to make sure that when you address the correct things, that you look at the big picture.
That's one of the reasons, it's really important as an instructional leader, you can look at the grading and look at their grade books and see, where are the trends? Is it that the student's really struggling across the board? Are they struggling with test taking? Where are the issues? But if you have 50s across the board, it's hard to say, okay, the child's just not motivated to do his homework or his classwork, but he's doing really well on tests. But with a 50 everywhere, you really can't, analyze that. Is it a teaching situation? Is it a student weakness situation, or what?
I know we don't have it here, but in the past, we did not use the dorm as a babysitting service. If a child was falling down, there was direct communications between the academic staff and the second shift staff. So a child may have gone into basically a remedial situation for the first hour or so after school, or there was a time that they were allotted that they needed to go to that. And then sometimes in that case, they may miss athletics. They may miss something special. It was not punishment, that we are trying to get this child up academically. So down the road, when we have the ability to get the kind of staff we have in place, it would be great to have a remedial person that could act like a resource room in itself and just hop from dorm pod to dorm pod.
Tutoring.
And absolutely tutor that child.
Yes, like tutoring.
We are actually looking at the schedule right now and trying to figure out some times where our students that are really struggling may get some additional assistance. So we're in the process of doing that right now.
Good.
Any other questions about this policy?
And I would just point out again, this is, I believe, a first read.
Yes,
So it'll come up again
yes.
next month. And if there are any further questions during the month, you can address them to Ms. Iannucci
Yes.
or me, but rather to Ms. Iannucci, and then she can respond if any changes are needed. Just following up on Dr. Dolman's point, if I'm correct, I was looking at page 4, carryover from page 4 to 5. The minimum grade floor for quarters 1 and 3, is that it?
Yes.
And then on page 5, to encourage students to remain engaged and motivated throughout the academic year, no student shall receive a grade lower than 50 in the first and third grading quarters. But it was then interesting, teachers must enter the earned grade in the comment section for parents. So that there's nothing being hidden and parents know there's an issue, which I thought was really significant. But then the posted grade should be overridden to 50, and that's to prevent them from getting so far behind they can never catch up. But then it says that applies only to quarter 1 and quarter 3, and quarter 2, the semester or final course grades must reflect actual student achievement. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a pretty good balance.
Yeah. The only problem is if the child is a day student, the responsibility now is not on us providing remedial services in the afternoon, but the parents now know what's going, know what we're doing. Here's a second chance. Then you talk to the director, Maybe the child can stay 1 or 2 days in the dorm, that's perfectly fine, just to get the remedial, if nothing else. Or she will have to contract outside services to get remedial services. So you've got to look at both sets every time you talk about something, day students and residential students.
The next two kind of go hand in hand, staff-student relations and student protection and mandatory reporting. This is basically just to, the policy as it was written referred to a MIT team, which consisted of a teacher, a colleague, a nurse, the superintendent, the principal, and the social worker. And so just to keep it more in line with protecting employee rights and student rights, making it more in line with just going for HR and the superintendent to handle those situations where there's suspected abuse by a staff member towards a student or another adult on campus, to, just protect that person's rights and not put it out there to a small group of people. And just to make it really clear in terms of, we cleaned up some of the language just in terms of that mandated reporting and the procedure. What we'd like to do is, because our school social worker has a relationship with the DSS offices and the different counties, and it's not simple where you can just make a call to Wilson DSS for all of our students. We have to look at what county that student resides in, if there's any concerns within the home. And so the social worker can help the teacher that, wants to file that report and provide that support to that teacher. Because when you are in a teaching situation, it can be very troubling if you have to file a report with DSS. And so by going through the social worker can support that staff member, can support, the child the way that they need to, as well as make the conversation with the DSS and make sure that they have all the information they know that they'll need to file that report. Yes.
Do you work with RHA Mental Health Services for the deaf?
I have not personally. I know Jet Jones and Lori Perkins provides a lot of the resources for our students. If they need counseling outside of ENCSD.
Whoa, what do you mean by that? RHA Mental Health Services has a program that provides services to the deaf and hard of hearing, adults and children both, and it's through the entire area. So I was just wondering if there was a contract with DMH for mental health. IIDA, whatever it's called, but anyway, I think that would be a good agency for us to work with. I know that they have some, issues making, working with students here before at school in the past, but there was some barriers for coming out to the school. But anyway, I still think it would be a good agency to work with.
Yeah, I know we have a social worker on staff and we have a school psychologist on staff. And so that's usually the first point of contact. And then if the student needs like regular counseling or some additional services, they try to refer out, but that may be a good agency to connect with.
Good deal, good deal.
Any questions on?
Okay, this is the interpreter. I think we have a question on this from me. I wanted to also add to Kevin's comment. The information needs to be given as EHH. And also for graduates of, I don't know who that is. The senior students, HEIU. It was a senior student that just recently graduated. It's a H on the, I'm not really sure who that is.
Hyla, I can't say, Hula.
Okay. I can't remember how to spell the name.
Yeah, we don't want to use students' names.
Okay, whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that he actually, I introduced him at the 60th anniversary. I introduced him and told him that he could work with VR. He was just kind of, didn't seem like he didn't know what was going on with that. And then I set him up with the booth at that time and introduced them. And he said, finally, I've been trying to get in touch with you forever.
Excuse me. I do think if we discuss individual students, we should probably, even if we don't name them, they might be identifiable because there aren't that many students. So this would be a perfect conversation for closed session.
Okay, hold on a
Let's
second.
not do it in open session.
What I can say to
Hold on a
that,
second. Hold on a second. We got three different people talking at the same time. What I'm trying to say is the student finally met VR, and I just wish that the student was able to contact VR and meet VR during their senior year. And I just encourage them to be more accessible to the students and have that relationship before they graduate, is what I'm trying to say.
we actually invite VR to our IEPs. We try to get them out during their junior year and then during their senior year. Unfortunately, VR has a shortage of personnel, and so they're not always able to send somebody, and our representative isn't always as available as we would prefer. But we are working with VR and try to get them to provide the services for our students. They also connect our students with the local rep here will send the folder and everything to the VR within the county that the student resides in, so that they can continue that service as well. But again, it just depends on their availability and how many they have within that district as well. The other thing that we are doing is VR and CWS, which is Career Work Solutions. They come here on Wednesdays all of last year, working with our students on career development, on what options they have after high school. So we do try to provide those services and those connections. And then the next is you will have your CPC, Capital Projects Coordinator agreement. And this is a draft, the last draft of the contract with Muter. And basically it would be providing services. So in addition to having a CPC that we would be working with, like John Long, Muter has the whole company kind of behind them. And so they provide a valuable service in terms of they can really look a little bit further and go deeper into the project. They can help with advocating and getting things into the state system, because they were actually both the two of the administrators of the company basically work for the state and are very familiar with state capital projects and the system that you have to enter all the data in to get the process moving forward. And so we've gone back and forth with them, and the attorneys have gone back and forth with them. We interviewed 2 different companies, and this was the company that we selected as the 3 schools based on the fact and the knowledge that their personnel had and what they could do for us. And so this contract started out initially around $500,000, and with working with them and the attorneys and John Long, they got it down to where it's at right now.
And my partner, Chris Campbell, had taken the lead on negotiating this contract. on behalf of all 3 residential schools. But the directors were heavily involved in that, had a lot of input, and as Ms. Anucci says, the price is significantly lower than Mutter had originally requested. I think I wasn't really part of those negotiations, but I'm sure one of the issues is when you go into a new contract, you never know how much work's going to be involved. And so from the company standpoint, they want to build in as high a price as possible so that they don't find that they've overreached. But this contract is only a 1-year contract unless both parties renew. So I think a good thing to do would be to monitor this. And if we could maintain records of how often they're out here and what they're doing so that we're better able to evaluate next spring. Is this a good price going forward, or if they ask for more, what do they have to support that, or should we ask for something less because our services were less than, for example, Governor Moorhead School or School for the Deaf and Morganton?
And this is just seen as a stopgap.
That's exactly right.
it
That's sort of my
takes-
point, yeah.
It's right now, I guess in the industry, it's taken about 18 to 22 months to hire a CPC. And so we were going into this as like just kind of carrying us through this year, get us through this transition, try to get, Alan trained a little bit on some of the scope and sequence of what's going on. And will we look for a CPC to hire in-house, hopefully, if the state can fund that position.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Bob.
is this considered a first reading of this stuff?
No, this would be a final approval.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we, the first and second reading requirement strictly applies to policies, does not apply to contracts, though nothing prevents the board from saying, let's give another, finally approve this next meeting. It's just that this has to be in place
July 1.
by July 1. And so if the board wants more time to look at it, I think it'd have to be a special called meeting to approve it finally before June 30.
But there is no price, like, I don't see a dollar amount on this, right?
Yeah, there is. That's
Where is it?
1C, about 3/4 of the way
Oh, I see.
down,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
$296,400.
Okay.
And I just don't have a good way of evaluating that. I do know that the directors were heavily involved. My partner, Ms. Campbell, was heavily involved.
John Long was also
John
involved
Long is
through the
involved.
process.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And since we are considering this for approval,
Yes.
I would suggest that everyone take a look at item number 1C under item number 1. But the last sentence concerns me greatly. I've seen a lot of contracts between state construction and everybody else you can think of. I've never seen a contract between a state agency and a board of trustees that if the board of trustees would like to meet with the contractor, the contractor is going to charge extra for that meeting. To me, that should be understood, that meetings are part of the interaction between the contractor and the board of trustees. So I'm a little bit at a loss as to why we're going to work for you, but if we talk to you, we're going to charge you more. I don't understand that.
And again, I wasn't involved in that. Cheryl might have an idea. I would point out that under E, okay, sorry. Okay, Alex Freeman, point of contact. I think Boney and Driver were not the people who are going to be doing the work, as it were, the main work. I think they are considered, am I correct, Cheryl? They're like
They're the owner, like
the
kind of
owners,
the
the top
owner.
level people.
Manager.
If we want to meet with them, then they'll charge extra. Now, your point remains.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And this was changed because like initially when we met and interviewed them, with what the thought was is that we would have one CPC assigned to each campus and that CPC would pretty much work on the campus. And then knowing that, you know, they wouldn't be able to be here 5 days a week, but at least a couple days a week. And then that went to once a week, and then it went to once every other week. So because of the cost involved. And so this looks very different than what the initial plan would have been. But a lot of that came down to cost.
I guess my reaction tends to be that this was negotiated. It was not just a compliant negotiation. There was back and forth, give and take. Price did come down. Directors were involved. I don't know how those discussions went. I don't know how adamant Mutter was on these points and what we pushed on. But I guess my reaction tends to be, it's been negotiated. 2, we need it. And it's 1 year. And let's see how it goes. I mean, again, it strikes me when I see 296,000. I think if we had a full-time CPC individual, it'd be significantly less than that. But as part of the negotiation process, and I think, again, I would say they don't know for sure what it's going to be, but John Long was involved. That was just a negotiated price.
So the point of contact here for Alex Freeman is kind of like, that's the John Long quote, was it? Is that?
He would be like, he's kind of like the superintendent of your construction company. Yeah, so this is
the person that we would call in any situation that comes up initially.
No, that would be the CPC that would be visiting the campus and working with us directly.
Oh.
So these guys are in the management level of the company.
So if we look at D, it says, in addition to the point of contact listed below, Greg Driver and Paul Boney and Leanne Honnell will provide services. But going to Mr. Jones' point, if there's a question, you'd contact Mr. Freeman, right? Would he be the person that would generally visit the campus?
No.
Who would that person?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. Wait a minute.
Because as I
Yes,
look
he
at,
would be. He would be the one.
as I look at D, it seems to imply.
Yes, so he would be our point of contact. He would be our CPC basically. And then he would have the resources of the company behind him and be able to like pull on them if needed.
Okay. And if it's not working out, we can request that he be, require that they appoint somebody else.
Mr. Chair. Bob. This is not an unusual contract at all to request professional services from a company that can provide that. So I do not understand, since we're contracting with that company for a significant amount of money, that should we have a question that requires the principal or a principal from that company to respond, why is that an additional amount of money? Because we're contracting with that company.
I can't argue. And other than this is what is presented, we could go back and say, now, for example, one could look at modifications. They'll be available to attend meetings on site up to 3 meetings a year.
I understand that.
Or something like that, so that it's not,
Exactly.
we've got a little issue, and all of a sudden the head of the company has to show up. Or 2 meetings a year. That might be a thing that would,
I understand it's not at a beck and call.
beck and call for the principal.
Exactly. I fully understand that, but to not have the option of asking for a principal to meet with us or discuss with us regarding an issue
Should be part of the contract.
That's, we're not contracting with the guy down at the bottom. We're contracting with the company, which they are principals of.
Is that not covered in 1E where the POC shall visit ENCSD a minimum of once every 2 weeks and is necessary to perform all services? That's,
So that's the
2
CPC
weeks.
itself.
I'm sorry.
That's the person that's going to be working directly with us.
That would
That's
be
not
I see.
POC or the CPC, or however we call them. Under here, it's called the POC, point of contact. So that person's supposed to come
Yeah, right.
regularly.
frequently. I think Mr. Boyette's going toward, well, there may be an occasion where we need the top guy.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
we shouldn't have to pay for that.
Yeah.
Since we're paying
Yeah.
$296,000.
I agree with that.
Well, if you want, we can, what if we go back and say,
I mean, that's just the cost of doing business.
what if she'll be available up to 2 times?
What-
If deemed necessary.
Whatever we can negotiate,
Yeah, okay,
we should.
okay. I'm fine with that. See if we can come up with something.
And 2, just so the board is aware, we have been working with OSBM trying to finalize where the monies for this is going to come from. We were asked by the attorneys if we could use our salary surplus, and my response was we could if we have it, but we don't know what the budget's going to entail, if we're going to have to cut positions or what, and whether or not we'll have that salary surplus moving forward. And so I know they are working with Blackwell's office, OSBM, and trying to figure out if we can use R&R funds for it. And so, or include it into the capital project somehow to pay for it.
Now, this is me. I am assuming that from what I know of state government right now, their funds have been cut and they're cutting positions everywhere. So they're, grabbing and taking money. From what I understand from other agencies is that it's pretty much, it's a freeze. So I wouldn't assume anything.
So the House bill has $700,000 going into the schools for each school to cover these costs, as well as some additional positions that we need for the transition. The Senate bill, as it's written right now, does not and has some positions being cut. So they're very far apart. Where they actually come together, I don't know.
And the House bill, that would be fairly flexible, would it not? I mean, like for
Anything,
administration,
yes. But that's
general
basically
administration,
what,
which would be quite useful.
yeah, what we've been told and what's been shared with us is that money was, to be able to be flexible to provide the positions that we need during the transition.
We had raised the issue, and we've talked about this in here, and Mr. Farmer is well aware of this, that public school districts have the state funding, then they have the local funds. And anything they don't want to do or can do through state funds, if it's, they can pay with local funds. And it's not really the state's business, because it's local funds, as long as it's accounted for properly. We haven't had those local funds, and this 700,000, I wouldn't call it local, it's all state. But it, in some sense, provides a pool of money that could be used as needed, which would be very helpful. And I know Representative Blackwell's doing great work on trying to get that through. And of course, what actually happens, we will see.
So is that a one-time fund? So the 600,000, 700,000 is a one-time fund.
I believe for the transition. But then we'll see, I think they will have, we'll see what it comes up the next year.
And then 300,000 they're gonna give us for transportation also if it passes the Senate.
Both bills have it, both bills have the transportation in there.
That's good.
So what we're gonna do on this one is not act on it today.
I guess,
It's a question.
I guess what I would recommend is the board approve it. And I'll have this recommendation on some other ones. Or give the chair and the board attorney authority to negotiate any revisions and approve it subject to revisions acceptable to the board chair and board attorney. And then we see what we can negotiate. That way we don't have to come back with a special meeting to then approve it.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so let's move.
Second.
Wait, understood, right? Rob?
What? Say it again? Yes, fine. I support everything.
All right, so really, we should officially vote on that.
Yes, yes.
So the vote is to give the board chair and legal attorney flexibility to change this procedure, this contract, to include some flexibility around the owners being available 1, 2, or 3 times or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And not just each time.
Yeah, and just to shorten the language, I'd say approve in the form substantially as presented with revisions acceptable to the board chair and board attorney.
Okay, that's it.
And that's the so moved.
So we have moved in a second and vote all in favor.
And then we know that's the issue.
Aye.
Whether they like it or not, they might say it's been negotiated. That's a very reasonable request. And I would have a hard time thinking, push come to shove, they're gonna say no. Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
We have 2 more lines of business, and those are your memorandum of understanding. And there's 2 of them. One is for DPI, and the second one is for DOA. The one with DPI is basically an agreement between ENCSD and DPI to cover professional liability, workman's comp, property and liability insurances that we currently have that through DPI that we would not have through DOA. And so in the legislation, it indicated that we would continue having those benefits, and so that was how that, they wanted to work that out was through an MOU.
Yeah, the legislation actually provides that there shall be, the DPI should provide certain insurance. And it was listed, workers' comp, professional liability, property, whatever DPI has for its business operations and its employees. Then DPI will continue to provide that for the 3 residential schools. And then on other insurance, DPI will facilitate, whatever that means. Okay, but that an MOU is required under the statute. So they will sign this and we will sign it. We've basically been trying to identify what other insurances there might be that should be addressed. And I was on probably about an hour yesterday with Eileen Townsend, who is the head of insurance for DPI, just so I have a better understanding of what DPI provides, what the state fire marshal provides, what State Tort Claims Act provides, such that we don't need insurance. Just kind of going through these step by step. This agreement is fairly bare bones, but there's not much more to put into it. But we needed to have those discussions. We also have a discussion lined up with the state fire marshal, just to confirm what property they provide, and if there's anything we need. For example, flood insurance. I don't know if the school flood insurance, I don't know what the flood zone is, but that's something that is available, but it's not standard in the state fire marshal's office. So we'll have to determine that. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So our D&O insurance as a board, as a trustee board, we will have to continue paying for that insurance out of our funds here.
That's correct. And when I spoke with Ms. Townsend yesterday, she emphasized that the one piece of insurance she strongly recommends that the board have is directors and officers liability insurance. And I said, yeah, we have that and we're gonna have that because you are not employees per se. And there's this issue of stipends for your $50, but generally you're not employees, so you're not covered by that. And there are immunities and there are protections for public officials, but one doesn't want to have to rely solely on that. And then some court saying, well, that doesn't apply to this circumstance, or plaintiff's lawyers arguing that. Let's add an overlay of D&O insurance. It was, I thought it was a good deal. I thought it was moderate in price to have that protection that we know is designed for that. So we have that. Anything else, if they need, our main issue was vehicle insurance. We wanted to make sure that there was coverage for liability arising from our vehicles. We hit somebody, their coverage. And then what about property damage? We can self-insure that if we want on the property damage to the vehicles. DPI will basically self-insure its vehicles. It has enough, it's not worthwhile paying insurance, they'll just repair some and self-insure. I don't know our situation there. One can list vehicles individually on state insurance. If we want to, we can do that. But we've determined that vehicles are automatically enrolled in liability. Every vehicle we own is covered by the liability claim. That's my main concern is some significant amount of damages arising from vehicle liability.
Now, is that if we use their vehicles or, because we returned one of their vehicles.
No, this is
We have
our
the
own.
schools. Okay.
We have vehicles, I assume,
Yes, we have 2,
That
those
are-
are buses.
entitled
Yes,
in our name. Do we have any maintenance vehicles or
we do, yes.
vans? all those things.
They're all ENCSD.
Yeah, every vehicle that we own, we're a state agency, will be covered by liability automatically. But if we want property damage on those vehicles, we probably have to enroll those separately.
Point of reference, in 54 years, I have seen 5 foot of water on the football field when
Okay.
Floyd came through. It did not come up the hill. So we've never seen flooding on the rest of the campus, and that is way down in the swamp where the football field is. The other situation is we used to have 3 Trailways buses and about 7 or 8, they were called maxi vans back then. They didn't have minibuses. And we had a disgruntled employee set one of the Trailway buses on fire, and it burnt to the ground right here on our campus. But it wasn't ours, it was an outside operators, but we had to pay for it because it was one of our employees that did it. Does any of that figure into what we've discussed?
Well, certainly the flood insurance is available. And we determined that State Fire Marshal there's a fund, state property insurance fund, something like that. Mr. Boyette might know the name. And we're covered for basic, which would be lightning, et cetera. But then there are other items one can add. Flood insurance would be one that could add. So it's not an all-risk policy. And that's the type of thing that you and Ms. Pittman probably should look at, go on. How much would it cost to get flood insurance? It could be added, but I have no idea how much it would be. I have no idea whether it have to be the whole facility or just parts of it, but that's something you could explore.
And I think what Gary's saying is that even with Floyd, this place didn't flood. Floyd was pretty bad. So it was just the football field, right, Gary?
Yeah.
that
Well,
flooded.
Festival Hall has got a basement, and sometimes that floods, but that's been, I think, corrected, but that was internal. That was water pipes breaking.
Okay.
So,
But anyway, that's something that you could explore. It's probably worthwhile exploring just to find out how much it costs. But
Mr. Chairman, there's an acronym for what the fund covers, and it's something like fire, wind, hail.
act of God.
It's,
it's,
I can't remember the acronym right now, but
Yeah.
you go by that acronym.
okay,
It's like wind, fire, hail. There's like 5 letters.
I remember,
It's been a long
hail,
time.
certainly lightning is in there. That'd be your basic coverage. Then you can buy additional coverage, but it would be at the expense of the school. And the MOU would basically just reference if they were covered by this, but if we want additional, that would be something for us to investigate. And then that'd be something really for you and Ms. Pittman to look at. Do we want any of those other coverages? But again, Ms. Townsend's big point, you need D&O, which we have. We have coverage for vehicle liability, which was one of my big concerns. And then whether we want coverage for damage to the individual vehicles, that's something you can check and see how much would it cost to register a certain vehicle and how much insurance would you pay, or would we just be better off self-insuring on that? Anyway, that's the MOU with DPI. And my recommendation is, again, that the board would approve the agreement, well, authorize the chair to execute the agreement in substantially the form presented with revisions acceptable to the board chair and board attorney. And then that gives us a chance to finalize it without having to call another meeting.
Again, this has to be done by June 30th.
That doesn't necessarily have to be done by June 30th. I think we all had contemplated that it would be done by June 30th. But there's still the statutory mandate remains. So if we don't have it we still have to do it and DPI has to do it. But we'll make efforts to try to get it done by June 3rd.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I can say I would agree.
Okay.
All right. Similar situation, so we agree that, how do you phrase this?
Yeah, that the chairman be authorized to execute the agreement in substantially the form presented with revisions acceptable to the board chair and board attorney.
That was a motion.
There's a motion.
Yeah.
Second.
Second. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carried.
And then the DOA, just say, I'm sure Ms. Iannucci agrees that it's a nice transition to DOA, to deal with DOA instead of that kind of a fraught relation with DPI. The statute requires a memorandum of agreement with DOA. All directors have offered input, and Cheryl has gotten input from Simone Lee as HR and Susan Pittman as finance officer. Again, we have a draft on that. That will be finalized within the next couple of weeks, I would imagine. I think it's good, but we'll have some finalizations, and my recommendation again would sound like a broken record. To authorize the chairman to execute the agreement in substantially the form presented with revisions acceptable to the board chair and board attorney. Then you don't have to meet again.
Is that a motion?
That would be a suggested
Just a
motion.
motion.
So I want to make a motion, exactly what Brian said.
So moved, right? So moved works.
Second. Second.
Oh,
Ross.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
On the third page, under F number 12,
This is,
a lot of changes have happened and are happening.
this document, the memorandum of understanding
Yes. It's on page 3,
draft, okay.
number 12
12.
at the bottom.
Oh, yes.
How do you define aid? Because I think we are going to need some help right here.
Is this immigration, is that what we're talking about?
Could we go, I guess my question is, could we get more than just aid? I'd like the word assistance better than I would aid.
Right, and assist provides, and that'd be, for example, number 6 says assist. During absence, that 6 is assist during absence of permanent school HR rep if office is not staffed.
I think assist is a stronger word than aid.
I do. I'd say assist, how about assist the coordination of I-9 validation during, rather than ongoing, during absence of school HR staff or as otherwise required. That'd be good. And fortunately, there's been a very positive interaction between the residential schools and DOA. Still, though, you wanted to put it in writing because you want to put it in writing while things are going well.
Right. They have been very helpful. They've voiced, that they're wanting to help us, and they want us to be as independent as we possibly can. But if we don't have staff in place to do whatever is needed, that we can rely on them to, support us in that area. So
Similar situation.
Similar situation.
Motion's on the floor, I believe, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
I think so.
Motion. Second. All in favor? Oh, it is. Okay. All right, these three documents.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Where are we now?
Closed session.
Could I bring up something really quick?
Sure, please.
I was watching the last speaker, and with that 3 minutes, I mean, you saw how she was really whipping through it, and I was watching the interpreter out of the corner of my eye thinking, oh my gosh, I would hate to be interpreting this because of the speed at which she's going and trying to process it. And I wasn't watching carefully enough to know whether you were able to get the complete message, but I know I would have really had a problem. And I'm wondering if we have speakers, because of the need for interpreting, if we can change it from 3 minutes to, say, 5 minutes or 6 minutes, to give them a chance to take a breath. Because, I mean, I was having to concentrate pretty hard with the words she was speaking. And I understand her totally. She's got 3 minutes, and it's, I mean, we've got a lawyer here telling us how much time she's got. That would intimidate me. So I just wonder, given our situation, whether we could have some modification in terms of the time limit, just because I think it would be very hard to convey that complete message in a comprehensible way to the deaf consumers, frankly.
Let me jump in on that. I agree 100% with you. I think the safeguard is that we have that 30-minute time. So it's not as if,
That's for group, though.
no, I think the 30-minute is
It's a total time.
Total time.
For anybody to talk.
for,
Not any one
for,
person, but
for
any-
public comment. We have a 30-minute limitation on public comment in toto unless the board agrees to extend. So we're not going to be in a situation where by speaking 5 minutes, it's going to extend us way too long. And I've been in many school boards, and they almost always have that 3-minute limitation. Many of them have a clock running. Okay, but here, if we haven't had a huge amount of public comment to date.
Right.
We don't have quite as many controversial issues that come up here as many school boards, and you have that interpretation issue. I think 5 minutes makes all the
Yeah,
sense.
and I think if it were me and I knew, okay, 3-minute limit, I would practice at home, which I bet she did, to make sure she got it into 3 minutes.
It's all written down.
And that was kind of an artificial, it's like, wow, she made it, but,
It's more like accomplishing the reading rather than speaking in
yeah.
a normal manner that she otherwise would.
So,
Let's ask the interpreter how they feel about it.
That's a deaf person.
That's what I mean.
I agree with him because sometimes, while they're trying to process it, I'll say, hold on a minute, like with this meeting, sometimes me as a deaf person, I don't have time to really process what's going on. And then I'm trying to look around the room like who's talking, and there's a little bit more freedom. So sometimes when they don't identify themselves, I'm like, who's talking? And I'm trying to figure out who's talking, who's not. So, it's him. It's him talking. Okay, Rob's talking. So, or, he's speaking or they're speaking. So that way, whenever I watch the interpreter, for me, sometimes it can be almost like a monotone type thing to compare with a hearing person. It's because it's like sometimes the flavor of information may change, but, with the comments and everything, the biggest thing for me is knowing who's speaking at the time, so I can kind of identify with who's talking at the time. Like with that person saying what they were saying is more of trying to express himself. At the same time, the interpreter is trying to have that mindset of the speaker. So everyone's not going to speak the same way. Everyone's not going to sign the same way. It's signed based on how your voice and your inflection. So sometimes if you have that monotone, but if it's the interpreter's expressive about it, then it comes through more clearly.
This is two separate issues. One is the meetings because we all talk. I understand what you're saying, but what he was saying is the person that has public input. Nobody is talking during that time but that person. He's saying, and I agree. I've been in many, and it's required, and the lawyers have a stopwatch, and they stop you right in the middle of a sentence. And I'll just give you a personal thing. I had to go to Raleigh, and I had talked to the powers to be to save this school. And 3 of us had a chance to talk because they said one of these schools is going to close. We're going to leave 2 open. They gave me 3 minutes to save this school in front of all these legislators and people. I practiced, and I couldn't get it down. I talked so fast, I don't even think anybody understood me, but that's all they gave me. And I think what you're saying is great. I'm happy you brought it up. I would vote right now to make it 5 minutes for public, input, really. Now, general meetings, I know it's hard because you don't understand who's talking. I understand all of it.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of precedent for 5 minutes. Some years ago that North Carolina Association of County Commissioners did a survey of who's having public comments at the beginning of the meeting, the middle of the meeting, or at the end of the meeting, and who's using 3 minutes and who's using 5 minutes. And there was great diversity. There was more 5 minute than there were 3 minute. But it was interesting because they're all throughout the meetings. We have ours at the very end of our meeting.
Yes.
And it's 5 minutes, and it's been that way for decades. But you'd be surprised how many are at the beginning, how many are in the middle, and how many are at the end. And one county has it twice. I would never do that. But 5 minutes is standard among a lot of county commissioners.
That makes sense. Yeah,
In
and
public school, it's 3 minutes.
And there's no law on it, but that's just,
No.
but also many school districts have a good number of people speaking. And a lot of them do not have a 30-minute or hour limitation. It's just, it goes on forever, which is one reason they have it at the end. So that you don't, if the meeting starts at 7:30, it's not, you don't start getting to business at 10 o'clock at night. You get the business done and then you let people speak. I think our situation is with the 30 minutes and the limited number of speakers, we'll be fine.
We need to make a motion for that, or? And that is in our, our bylaws or something?
We probably have a policy on that, whether it's, the limit says 3 minutes, but it revised the applicable policy to change the
Okay.
period of comments from 3 minutes to 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, well, let me make that motion to do that from
That's
3 to
great.
5.
So revise the policy for public input.
Good point.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if Dolman is willing, could we ask to suspend the requirement for a first and second reading for this and instead go ahead and approve it as a policy change at this meeting? So it would take effect at our next
That's a
meeting.
good point.
Especially if it's a second reading, go back and look at where it's established already and then change that one.
All right, so your motion is,
No,
Dr. Dolman,
yeah, that's fine. To suspend the second reading requirement. To approve
to
it
approve
from
3
3
to 5
to
minutes.
5 minutes.
So,
second.
all right, Rob, second that. The motion was by, you got that. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, same sign? All right, thank you, Dave, I guess that's right. Good. All right, so we've finished all the normal business items. We go to closed session.
You want to have a break first?
Yeah, we'll take a break first.
We're not going to go into closed session.
Okay.
All right, we have the break now.
All right, we're having a break, about 5 minutes. Yeah. Then we come back to the closed session.
Great.